Be some sweet sounds coming down on the night shift. I bet you're singing proud. I bet you'll pull the crowd on the night shift. Gonna be a long night. It's gonna be alright on the night shift. Well, you found another home. I know you're not alone on the night shift. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Unrelenting Alchemist, all spiritual all the time. And we're continuing our series on the primordial gods, going into the Protogenoi of Greece, early Greek mythology, the gods before the gods. Before the Olympians, before even the Titans, there were the Protogenoi. These were the firstborn of Greek mythology. These primordial deities were not merely gods in a traditional sense, but they were personifications of the very elements and principles that constitute the cosmos. Unlike the anthropomorphic deities of Mount Olympus, the Protogenoi were the embodiments of earth, air, night, chaos, even love itself. In many ways, they were not characters within the universe, but the universe made divine. Their very names echo the elemental powers they represent: chaos, air or void; Gaia, earth; Nyx, the night; Eros, love; Tartaros, the abyss, and many others. The earliest literary sources that we have on these beings are the Hesiod's Theogony and the comedic yet mythologically rich birds by Aristophanes. In Theogony, Hesiod speaks of the spontaneous emergence of chaos and Gaia, from whom all other beings would inevitably descend. Aristophanes, drawing from Orphic traditions, presents a slightly different cosmogony, emphasizing the role of Nyx and Eros in the creation of the cosmos. Yet both sources agree on one essential truth: that before the gods could reign, reality itself had to take form, and the Protogenoi were the instruments of that initial formation. This video is going to explore the elemental and metaphysical importance of the Protogenoi, making them the foundational principles in Greek mythology. We're going to look at their roles in shaping how the Greeks understood the cosmos, their relationships with one another, and the profound symbolic meanings that their stories inevitably convey. Through this journey into the most primordial and ancient layers of Greek mythology, we're going to look at how the Greeks understood the birth of existence itself, not as a random occurrence, but as an orchestration of very organized, deliberate, divine elemental forces. Although some looking at chaos may say that that's the opposite of organization, but that's another story. So let's talk about chaos and the void. The very first deity mentioned in Hesiod's Theogony is chaos, often misunderstood as the simple disorder or confusion. In the Greek original, chaos really means a gaping or yawning void, a boundless expanse that predates all formation. It is not yet the sky, nor space in the modern sense, but a kind of elemental emptiness or uninformed potential. And this is not evil or chaotic in the contemporary sense of how we think of chaos, but rather it is the necessary precondition for existence. It is a space into which all things inevitably come to be. Chaos is not without generative power. According to the Hesiod, from chaos came Erebos, the darkness; Nyx, the night; and eventually Ether, which is the heavenly light; and Hemera, which is the day. So chaos initiates a sequence of births that move from darkness to light, mirroring the metaphysical progression of absence to presence, and from silence to articulation. Chaos, then, is the mother of dualities. Where chaos births the opposites that make differentiation and life altogether possible. In Aristophanes' Birds, chaos appears again not merely as the void, but as a mate for Nyx. The two together bring forth Eros, the agent who catalyzes cosmic union. This depiction grants chaos a more active and even romantic dimension, one that aligns with the Orphic tradition where cosmic evolution depends on erotic and harmonic energies as much as elemental ones. Symbolically, chaos reflects the ancient Greek idea that the universe did not arise from a structured design necessarily, but from formlessness, as an unconditioned potentiality which would later congeal into form and substance and order through the agency of other protogenoi. This stands in stark contrast to later teleological models of creation, say, for example, in the Abrahamic faiths. Instead of a god imposing design on nothingness, here we have elemental beings emerging from and shaping the void itself into reality. So let's talk about the birth of Gaia, and this is important because the earth becomes a foundation for many things. If chaos is the space into which the universe begins to form, Gaia is the substance of that formation. Described by Hesiod as wide-bosomed and the ever-sure foundation of all deathless ones, Gaia is the literal earth, the solid, fertile ground from which all life and even the gods can arise. She is not merely a place, but a divine being whose generative capacities are unmatched. She births mountains and seas, and eventually, with Uranos, which is heaven, the Titans, and a number of other divine races. Gaia therefore represents a structure, materiality, as well as a nurturing power of nature. What distinguishes Gaia from later goddesses is her autonomy. Before the advent of male partners, she creates several primordial deities all on her own without the need to procreate. Uranos, the sky; Uria, the mountains; Pontos, the sea. This solitary creative act positions her as the archetype of creation, a maternal figure embodying the richness and boundlessness of nature. In many myths, even when male deities are involved, it is Gaia who initiates or facilitates cosmic transformation. She encourages her son Kronos to castrate Uranos, symbolizing her power, but not only to create, but to correct a sense of imbalance. Now, in artistic and literary traditions, Gaia is sometimes anthropomorphized as a woman partially rising from the ground, draped in green and adorned with vegetation. This imagery reinforces her essential unity with the land itself. She is not just in the world, she is the world. Her mythic role is echoed across many cultures where an Earth Mother deity represents both creation and ultimately stability. In Greek cosmology, Gaia is the sacred ground upon which the rest of the divine drama seems to unfold. Her children, the Titans, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatoncheires, represent various natural and metaphysical forces, showing that Gaia's creative touch can extend not just to form, but to energy, power, and the agents of cosmic change. Gaia is the generative matrix, and she is the eternal witness to the divine order. Now let's talk about Nyx and Erebos, which really brings us to the subject of night and darkness itself. Born from chaos, Nyx the night and Erebus the darkness are not mere shadows, but vital forces within the cosmos itself. They embody the necessary absence that allows perception, reflection, and transformation. Nyx, in particular, is one of the most awe-inspiring figures in Greek mythology, so powerful that even Zeus himself feared her. Hesiod lists her as the mother of numerous abstract forces, many of which govern the unseen or the unavoidable aspects of existence itself. For example, hypnos, which is sleep, thanatos, which is death, moros, which is doom, nemesis, which is retribution, eris, which is strife, and the Hesperides, among others. These children suggest that Nyx is not only the veil of the physical world in the 3D as we know it, but the womb of mystery. She governs the liminal spaces, the sleep, the dreams, the death, and the destiny, realms where control is lost and divine takes over. Her domain is the quiet movement, and it is a moment that takes place before dawn. The stillness that precedes action, the unconscious that births inspiration, and it could even result in sheer terror. She is both womb and tomb, keeper of secrets and judge without partiality. Erebos, her consort, represents a deeper layer of this darkness, the unfathomable void in which Nyx births her children. If Nyx is the night sky and the enveloping dark of the world itself, then Erebos is the hidden depth, the cavernous, the unseen backdrop that allows light and shadow to exist. Together, they are not antagonistic to light, but they are coexistent with it. Their offspring, Ether, which is brightness, and Hemera, which is day, show that darkness does not oppose illumination. It precedes and enables it. It is a delicate balance that must be maintained, as this duality is echoed in Orphic cosmology and later Neoplatonic thought, where darkness is the fertile unknown, the source of all becoming. The mystical traditions would often invoke Nyx as a symbol of sacred mystery, but also intuitive insight. She is the velvet darkness that invites contemplation. She is the inner knowing, and she is the return to the source itself. What about the unifying power of Eros? Among the most fascinating and metaphysically rich of the Protogenoi is Eros, the god of love. In Hesiod's Theogony, Eros is described as one of the very first beings to come into existence, born after Gaia and Tartaros. He is said to unnerve the limbs and overcome the mind and wise counsels of all gods and all men within them. His power is immediate, it's irrational, it's irresistible. Yet he is also the divine agent of cohesion. In a cosmos born from fragmentation and opposition, Eros brings union. Aristophanes offers a different version of Eros in birds, describing him as a golden-winged being born from a cosmic egg, laid by Nyx into the depths of Erebos. Eros then mates with Khaos, producing the first birds, and ultimately sets into motion the union of the elements. J, which is the earth, Uranos, which is heaven, Okeanos, which is the ocean. Here, Eros is not merely an emotional force, but the catalyst of the cosmos, the primal mover that integrates spirit and matter. What unifies these depictions is Eros' function as the divine harmonizer. Unlike other Protogenoi who embody a specific element, Eros animates the relationships between them. He is not the thing itself, but the binding force. As such, he prefigures the Neoplatonic idea of love as the power that draws the many back to the one. His energy makes the multiplicity of creation intelligible as well as sustainable. In philosophical interpretations, Eros also comes to represent the soul's longing for the divine. Plato's Symposium explores Eros as a ladder, from base desire to divine aspiration. This vision of Eros as both cosmic and personal explains why the Greeks held him in such a reverence. He bridges elemental existence as well as transcendental unity beyond the veil. Now let's talk about Tartarus and the depths below. Often overlooked in many discussions of the Protogenoi is Tartaros, the deep abyss beneath even the foundations of Gaia. Unlike Hades, which later becomes the realm of the dead, Tartaros is a metaphysical zone. It's an endless pit or void representing the extremity of descent and containment. In Theogony, Hesiod describes Tartaros as existing far beneath Gaia as the earth is beneath the heavens. This vertical conception of the cosmos suggests that just as there is a skyward aspiration, Uranus, there's also a downward pull towards Tartaros. Tartaros is not simply a prison, though that becomes one of its later roles within Greek mythology, is a place of containment for those that need to be imprisoned. But fundamentally, Tartaros is a stabilizing counterpoint to expansion. In a world constantly unfolding, there must be a boundary, a limit, a grounding force, and Tartaros absorbs what must be sealed, what must be hidden or restrained, the monstrous, the excess, the uncontrollable. It is the ultimate repository of entropy. The Titans, after being overthrown by the Olympians, are cast here. In other words, they're not necessarily destroyed, but they are imprisoned within Tartaros. In Orphic and later mystical traditions, Tartaros can be seen as the unconscious or the abyss of the psyche, a place of confrontation and transformation. Psychologically, Tartaros symbolizes the journey into shadow, the underworld trial necessary for self-integration. If we ever talked about Carl Jung and shadow work, perhaps this is a path within that. In cosmological terms, it is a space of renewal, the womb of darkness from which light must periodically emerge. Tartaros then is not antithetical to life, but is essential to its balance. It is the void that receives imbalance so that order may eventually persist. Like the alchemical nigredo, it is the first stage of dissolution required for rebirth. Now let's talk about the children of Gaia and Uranus. The Titans become the sort of bridge between the primordial deities and the Olympians themselves that we've all heard of. While the Protogenoi established the raw elemental and metaphysical foundations of the universe, the cosmos itself evolves through their offspring, most notably the children of Gaia and Uranus. Their union produces the Titans, who represent more defined, structured aspects of nature, time, and divine power. With this generation, mythological narrative begins to resemble more familiar forms, divine personalities, struggles, lineages, and moral consequences. Among these children are the 12 Titans: Oceanus, Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, Iapetus, Dia, Rhea, Themis, Nememocin, Phoebe, Tethys, and Kronos. Each embodies a powerful concept. Hyperion is associated with the sun, Oceanus with the encircling river of the world, Themis with the divine law, Mnemosyne with memory, Kronos with time. In them we witness a shift from just raw elementalism to an archetypal governance. The Titans are no longer inseparable from their domains, as Gaia is from earth or Nyx is from the night. They are gods who govern forces rather than embody them completely. Their story is very turbulent. At Gaia's urging, Kronos overthrows his father, Uranus, severing the sky from the earth and allowing individual rule to replace the primordial totality. This castration has enormous symbolic weight because it is a mythic depiction of differentiation, the severance necessary for individuation as well as consciousness. In doing so, Kronos sets in motion the generational conflict that defines Greek mythology, the cycle of succession that will later culminate in the eventual rise of the Olympians. Importantly, the Titans are still deeply bound to the Protogenoi. Gaia births them. Uranus confines them, and eventually, when Zeus and the Olympians rebel, many of them are hurled into Tartarus. The very structure of the cosmic hierarchy, the primordial to the Titan to the Olympian, is established. The Protogenoi do not vanish in this process, they just remain foundational, present in ritual, cosmology, as well as inevitably psych, um, philosophical thought. Gaia is still invoked in oaths. Nyx still governs dreams. Eros still remains the pulse of creation, the passion between the sexes, or inevitably some form of love. The Titans merely mark the next octave in the symphony of existence itself. So that brings us to our conclusion, which is that the Protogenoi are contained within an eternal echo. The Protogenoi are not gods in the familiar sense of how we come to know them with certain personalities and so forth. They do not reside on Olympus. They do not interact regularly with each other's or mortals, so to speak. They don't concern themselves with human affairs. Rather, they are forces, vast, impersonal, eternal. They precede not only the Olympians but also the structure of mythology itself. In many ways, they form the very grammar of divine language: air, earth, night, love, abyss, and light. Their relevance is far from limited to ancient poetry. The Protogenoi resonate across mystical, philosophical, and psychological traditions. They are archetypes of the unconscious, of the elemental truth, of the spiritual power beyond form. To contemplate Gaia is to reflect on rootedness, grounding, and nourishment by the earth. To invoke Nyx is to touch mystery and the sacred unknown of dreams and the night. To recognize Eros is to affirm the unifying principle that brings multiplicity into harmony, universal love. In Hesiod's theogony, they emerge one by one as inevitabilities of existence. In Aristophanes' Birds, they create through surreal mythic eggbursts in the deep of darkness. They testify to the ancient Greek belief that the world is not merely a place, but is a living process rooted in divine intelligences that are far older than any of the gods of Olympus ever could be. The Protogenoi remind us that before wisdom, there was awareness. Before the law, there was love. Before the sky opened up, or the sea swelled, or the mountains rose, there was still the sacred birth of chaos. And in that breath, the whisper of all that would come to be, we truly have everything that comes into existence, even though it may seem at times like a sort of contradiction. Thank you for joining me in this sacred hour. This has been another exciting episode of the Unrelenting Alchemist, and I hope you found this information helpful. Until next time, don't forget to walk wisely, don't forget to walk bravely, and when the dark calls, answer not with fear, but with fire and light. Take care. And if I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I love you.